Hi everyone, this is Garrison from Iron Kingdoms at War. Finally getting around to showing you how to paint the Iron Kingdoms house that I posted up on YouTube a few days ago as far as a how-to. Now we're going to talk about how to paint this thing, and I'm going to give you a crash course and just give you the basics. The first thing I want to say about paint is go cheap. You know, save your nice paints for your miniatures, and you know, use the cheap paints like craft paints on terrain. So I'm going to be able to get by almost exclusively on these 5 colors. I've got their apple barrel craft paints. They're really cheap at Michael's craft store in the United States, or like a discount store such as Walmart. I've got a nutmeg brown, which is a basic brown. I've got a country tan. I've got a basic gray, what they call pewter gray. I've got a black, and then this is Folk Art brand, but it's another good example of a cheap craft paint brand. Wicker white, and Apple Barrel makes a white that's good too. So these 5 colors are going to be able to take care of most of our house painting, with the exception of a couple details, which I'll get to. Now, paint brushes, all you're going to need is just kind of a big brush for covering broad areas, and a smaller brush. When I say a smaller brush, I'm not talking about something you use on minis like an 18-0 or a 10-0 fine liner or something like that. It's still pretty big, but you know, it's going to be able to get into some of the tighter areas on our terrain piece. You're going to want something to mix these paints in so we can get different shades for highlighting and so forth. You could use wax cups. I wouldn't suggest a palette. That's a little small for the amounts we're going to be mixing. I want to point out that when you get your Warmachine or Hordes miniatures and they come in these plastic cases, these, before you throw them away, I want you to know that these make great paint mixing pots. So basically I take this and I just cut off the lid, because otherwise it's going to be a little unbalanced. And then what I've got is a nice paint mixing tray that I can mix paints in. So let's actually get started right now with our first mixture. Alright, now you'll see that a lot of this is brick. I want to point out before I get started on painting, I have added one detail since the other video, and that is some detailing around the chimney. I wanted kind of a metal reinforcement around the chimney. So I took some cardboard to create a strip around this. You could use plastic card or plastic yard sign as well to make kind of what's supposed to be a metal sheeting around this. And I did my rivets with the snaked putty slicing method that you can see in my YouTube video on making crates, as far as how to make and apply those rivets. So that's a little detail that's been added. I'm going to add a couple of other physical details to the house that we'll talk about at the end of the painting process. But let's talk about painting. First thing we're going to do is paint the brick area around the bottom of the house. Now, you could go with a black base coat. In fact, sometimes people like to coat their entire terrain project in a black base coat before they do anything else. I think that's sometimes a wasted step. I'm going to do black. You could do black in the brick, of course, to get into the crevices for your dark areas. I'm going to do a mixture of black and gray to get kind of a dark gray for my base coat of that area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some gray paint. I'm going to squirt it in my makeshift paint pot here. And I did cut the lid off this because I know I'm going to make the right amount, but I did want to point out you could actually keep it attached. It's just going to be a little unsteady, the part we cut off, and you could kind of seal this, and you might get a day out of your paint if you need to do your project over a couple days. I'm going to add probably 2 parts gray to 1 part black. I'm going to start to mix that up with my brush, and I'm going to see if I like that color. I want a nice dark gray, but I don't want black. This is looking pretty good. It's a little thick, but and I could add some water, but I think it's going to do. So I'm going to get in there and I'm going to start painting my brick areas. Right. So the main thing on this brickwork is these styrofoam bricks that we cut are, the crevices are really tricky. It's easy to paint over this and then you see blue foam or pink foam in there later on because you missed a spot. And you may have to go back to it after your first base coat dries and touch up some areas. But the main thing I want to point out is you take what we've made as your dark gray, and we go up to that wooden frame because we're doing everything that's brick. Don't forget our chimney's brick too, so we're going to need to go back and get that. But basically I'm getting in there and I'm base coating this area. I wanted the paint a little thick because it's going to make sure. I just like a thicker paint. I mean, you could water it down, but the problem with watering down is when you're covering up styrofoam, if your paint is the least bit thin, it's going to show, your pink or blue is going to show right through, and then you got to go apply multiple coats, which is okay, but it can be kind of a pain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this entire part of the building. It's okay if I go onto the wood and the parts that aren't going to be this gray. We'll touch that up later. Okay, I'm going to try to get all in beside those crevices, knowing that I might have to do touch up later. I'm going to go all around the building like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do that and speed up the video, and you can watch me do that for this section. Okay, so you can see I've got the basically the first base coat done for the bricks. I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to go in as necessary and get into the crevices where there's still some blue foam showing up. We also did the chimney, and then we'll talk about next steps as soon as that dries in just a second, or in about an hour in reality, and about a second in the video. So far, I'm pretty excited. I can't wait to do some highlighting on that brickwork.